You won't last a minute, human, the alien princess boasted. She had no idea who she'd confronted. Spires of crystal and metal towered over the bustling streets, where alien beings of every shape and color moved with purpose. Some had wings that shimmered like glass, others had multiple arms, and a few walked on legs that bent in ways humans could not imagine. At the center of it all stood the palace, a monumental structure carved from white stone and crystalline panels that reflected the sunlight in dazzling patterns. Inside the palace, Princess Lyra prepared herself. She was the pride of Scifi, known across the galaxy for her unmatched skill in combat. Her long, flowing hair shimmered like silver threads, and her eyes glowed faintly, a sign of her unique Scifian energy. Today, she would face a new challenger. The rumors had reached her ears. A human named Captain Elias Kane had arrived on Scifi. Lyra had never met a human in person. She had faced warriors from hundreds of planets, many stronger and faster than the strongest Scifian soldiers. But humans, she was told, were clever and adaptable. Still, she smiled to herself. "You won't last a minute," she boasted aloud, practicing the words on her tongue. Her voice carried confidence, even pride. She had trained her whole life for this, and she expected an easy victory. Meanwhile, in the human delegation quarters, Captain Elias Kane was preparing in a very different way. The human was tall, with short brown hair and sharp, attentive eyes. He wore a simple uniform, nothing like the elaborate armor Lyra favored. While Lyra's people were born into combat, humans had to train in unpredictable conditions, and Elias had spent years learning to adapt, to survive, and to think quickly under pressure. He did not need flashy armor or glowing eyes to be formidable. Elias walked out onto the balcony overlooking the city. He studied the streets below and the palace arena, noticing details that others might miss. The angles of the walls, the weight of the air, even the faint hum of energy that vibrated through Scifi's ground. Humans had learned to survive on a fragile planet called Earth, with dangerous weather, unstable terrain, and creatures that could kill in an instant. Adaptability was in his blood, and he carried it here, to this distant world. "Captain Kane," said Lieutenant Mara, his assistant, "Princess Lyra expects you in the arena soon." She sounded nervous, as most Scifians did when they first saw humans up close. Humans were unpredictable. They didn't follow patterns that made sense to aliens. Their minds worked differently, and that made them dangerous. "I understand," Elias replied calmly. "I'm ready." The arena itself was a marvel. Suspended above the city, a platform made of transparent energy panels stretched across the sky. Below, the streets of Scifi seemed tiny, like a toy model. Around the arena, thousands of spectators had gathered. They came from distant star systems, some riding on floating vehicles, others teleporting directly to observation points. All of them had heard of Princess Lyra, the undefeated warrior. But the human challenger was new. Nobody knew what to expect. When Elias entered the arena, Lyra's eyes narrowed. She was taller than most Scifians, with a lithe, muscular build honed from years of training. Her armor reflected the sun's light, making her seem almost untouchable. She walked with confidence, her boots barely making a sound on the energy floor. "Ah, the famous human," Lyra said, her voice carrying across the arena. "I hope you understand your situation. This is not a place for diplomacy or negotiation. This is the combat arena. You will last a minute at most." Elias smiled faintly. "I'm here to learn, Princess, and perhaps to surprise you." Lyra laughed, a sound that echoed like crystal chimes. "Surprise me? Humans are fragile. You have no experience with the techniques of Scifi. One wrong move and you will fall." The spectators murmured. Some leaned forward in excitement, eager to see the human defeated. Others whispered among themselves, curious about how a human could possibly survive against the legendary princess. The arena's gates closed, isolating the two combatants on the energy platform. The floor shimmered, responding to Lyra's presence. Energy lines formed beneath her boots, mapping her strength and movement patterns. Elias noticed the lines but did not panic. Humans had faced danger many times in unexpected ways. They relied not just on strength, but on wit, on adaptability. He knew that brute force alone would not win, but cleverness could. Lyra raised her hands, energy gathering around her fingers. A faint hum filled the air as she prepared her first attack. She moved with incredible speed, faster than the eye could track. Her strikes were precise, intended to overwhelm and intimidate. "Are you ready to die, human?" she called, her voice sharp and confident. Elias remained calm. He dodged the first strike, feeling the air ripple from her energy, then another, and another. Lyra's attacks were relentless, but Elias moved differently from what she expected. He didn't just react, he predicted, using his understanding of patterns to anticipate the next move. Humans had an advantage here, their unpredictability. The crowd gasped as Elias leapt, rolled, and countered in ways no Xiphrin had attempted before. He did not rely on raw power. Instead, he used misdirection, timing, and the arena's terrain to his advantage. For a brief moment, he seemed almost untouchable. Lyra's eyes widened. This human was clever, too clever. "Impossible," she muttered under her breath. She had faced warriors stronger, faster, and more experienced than this human. None had moved like Elias. He seemed to bend the rules of combat, using creativity where others relied on training. Lyra realized, even as her pride burned, that underestimating a human had been a mistake. The duel escalated. Lyra launched energy blasts, rapid strikes, and complex maneuvers, but Elias adapted to each with an ease that frustrated her. The platform beneath them glowed brighter, responding to their movements. Sparks of energy flared with each contact, lighting the arena in brilliant flashes of blue and gold. The spectators watched in awe. Humans were supposed to be fragile, yet here was one defying all expectations. His movements were not just about avoiding attacks. He seemed to anticipate them, to turn her own energy against her. The crowd began to cheer, not just for Lyra, but for the human who dared to challenge the unbeatable. Lyra's confidence began to waver. She had been the undefeated princess, the pride of Xiphera. Never had someone challenged her in such a way. And yet here was a human, standing firm, clever, and unbroken. Her attacks grew faster, more desperate. Each strike carried more energy, more intent to dominate. But the human adapted, using agility and insight rather than strength alone. Elias smiled faintly beneath the intensity. He had faced impossible odds before. Every challenge he met on Earth had taught him patience, observation, and creativity. Here, on a distant planet, facing an alien princess, none of that changed. Humans were survivors. And survival required more than muscle. It required thought, flexibility, and courage. As the suns dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the arena, the first part of the duel drew to a close. Lyra stopped, breathing heavily, energy lines flickering erratically beneath her boots. She realized that this human was not just strong, he was extraordinary in a way she could not yet define. Elias stood calmly, ready for whatever came next. The crowd erupted into cheers, many of them rising to their feet. Some could not believe what they had just witnessed. The human, who was supposed to last only a minute, had survived against the unbeatable princess. And he had done so with intelligence, creativity, and calm determination. Lyra looked at him, her pride wounded but her curiosity piqued. "This is only the beginning, human," she said, her voice quieter now, almost thoughtful. "We will see how long you can really last." Elias met her gaze steadily. "I never planned to last only a minute," he said. "I plan to endure and to learn." As the sun set over Xiphera, the arena was filled with tension, excitement, and a sense of something new. A story of unexpected strength, ingenuity, and the beginning of a legend that would be remembered across galaxies. Humans, it seemed, were not as fragile as the universe had once believed. The arena pulsed with energy as the suns of Xiphera sank lower, casting long shadows that danced across the transparent platform. The crowd, a sea of alien shapes and colors, had quieted for the moment, anticipation thick in the air. All eyes were on Princess Lyra and Captain Elias Kane. Lyra's confidence was shaken, but she would not admit it. Her pride demanded that she remain composed, that she maintain the aura of the unbeatable warrior. She narrowed her glowing eyes at Elias, who stood calmly on the other side of the arena. Sweat glistened on her forehead, but her posture was perfect, every muscle coiled and ready to strike. "You survived the first round," she said, her voice measured but sharp. "I expected no less, but now, human, you will see the true power of a Xipheran princess." Elias tilted his head slightly, his expression relaxed. "I've seen the first round," he said simply. "Now I'll see the second." His calmness irritated Lyra more than any attack ever could. She stepped forward, her boots humming as they touched the energy floor. With a flick of her wrist, she sent a wave of energy slicing across the arena. It moved like liquid fire, twisting and turning, seeking to knock Ilias off balance. He leapt sideways, landing lightly, his eyes scanning for openings. He noticed the edges of the energy wave, leaving faint sparks on the platform. With quick thinking, he grabbed a small energy shard that had broken off and used it to deflect another strike. The crowd gasped. Humans were not supposed to move like this. Their bodies were weaker, slower. Yet here was one dodging, countering, and using the environment to his advantage. Lyra's attacks were precise and powerful, but Ilias' adaptability made him unpredictable. Lyra growled. She had been trained to fight warriors who followed patterns. Every alien she faced had a style, a rhythm, a predictable approach. But Ilias had no rhythm that she could see. He was chaotic, yet controlled. Every move he made had a purpose, yet she could not anticipate it. "You are clever, human," she admitted almost reluctantly, "but cleverness alone cannot save you." Ilias smiled faintly. "Cleverness is nothing without action." He darted forward suddenly, using the speed of his legs and the arena's floating panels to slide beneath one of Lyra's swinging energy blades. In one smooth motion, he kicked a panel, redirecting it toward her path. Lyra leapt, twisting her body in midair, barely avoiding the collision. The spectators were on the edge of their seats. Many had never seen combat like this. It was not about sheer power. It was about thinking, moving, and reacting in ways no one had taught you. Ilias embodied something the aliens had rarely seen, a mind as sharp as his reflexes, a warrior who could adapt on the fly. Lyra's frustration grew. Her glowing hands crackled with energy as she prepared a more complex attack. She extended both arms, summoning a series of spinning energy rings, each one faster than the last. "Let's see if your human mind can survive this," she said. Ilias observed the rings carefully. On Earth, he had trained with weapons, traps, and simulations far more dangerous than this. He analyzed the rings, spacing, speed, and rotation. Timing was everything. With careful steps and swift movements, he weaved through the spinning energy barriers, his body bending and twisting in ways that looked impossible. The aliens gasped again. They had never seen such agility. And yet Ilias moved not recklessly, but with precision, conserving energy for the moments that counted. One wrong step would mean a fall, but he moved as if he had done this 100 times before. Lyra's eyes widened. She had trained her entire life for perfection in combat, but this human forced her to rethink everything. He was unpredictable. He turned her own attacks into opportunities. Every strike she launched, he seemed to anticipate and counter, but not in the way she expected. "You adapt too quickly," she said, her voice tight. "No one should be able to counter me like this." Ilias did not respond immediately. Instead, he focused on his surroundings. The energy panels beneath them flickered and hummed with each movement. Some were unstable. On Earth, Ilias had learned to use terrain to his advantage. He began leading Lyra toward these unstable panels, drawing her into positions where her own attacks could become dangerous. Lyra noticed what he was doing, but she was too focused on offense to adjust quickly. She unleashed a powerful forward strike, an energy spear aimed directly at Ilias. He twisted in midair, landing on a panel that trembled beneath him. The panel cracked slightly under his weight, sending a shockwave that caused Lyra to stumble. He seized the moment, pushing off the panel to regain balance and advance toward her. The crowd roared. This was no longer a simple duel. It was a demonstration of intelligence, agility, and courage. Humans were supposed to be fragile, but here was one not only surviving but controlling the flow of battle. Lyra's pride burned. She was undefeated, and yet a human had managed to hold his own against her. She realized something unsettling. Brute strength was not enough. Adaptability, creativity, and timing, these were the keys to Ilias' skill, and humans, she realized, possessed these in abundance. "You are more dangerous than I imagined," she admitted, her tone quieter now, almost respectful. "Your moves, they are not predictable. You are not just reacting, you are planning, even under pressure." Ilias nodded. "Humans survive by thinking ahead and learning quickly. Strength is important, but without thought it is useless." Lyra's eyes narrowed. She would not lose. She could not. She summoned her energy once more, forming a shield and launching multiple energy blades in a wide arc. Ilias studied the incoming blades, calculating angles and timing. On Earth, he had trained with complex obstacles that required split-second decisions. He dove, rolled, and flipped, each movement precise, avoiding every blade while slowly advancing toward her. Lyra realized with a jolt that he was learning her style in real time. Each move he made gave him insight into her attacks. In just a few minutes, he had adapted to techniques that took her years to master. And yet he did not rely on strength alone. His speed, his timing, his creativity, these made him a truly formidable opponent. The arena shook as Lyra grew more aggressive. Sparks flew with every collision, illuminating the faces of the astonished spectators. Energy lines traced their movements, creating patterns of light that danced across the platform. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt genuine fear, not for her life but for her pride. "You are extraordinary," she said, voice tight. "I did not expect a human to be like this. You are adaptable." Elias paused for a moment, catching his breath. "Humans have to be," he said simply. "We survive by learning, by observing, by using what's around us. Strength is not enough." Lyra stared at him, realizing the truth in his words. She had faced hundreds of warriors, many stronger than she could imagine. None had adapted like this human. None had moved with such precision and creativity under pressure. And now she understood something important. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy, but that mistake could be fatal. The duel continued, now moving across floating platforms that shifted slightly with every step. Elias adjusted to each change effortlessly, his human instincts guiding him. He used the unstable panels to his advantage, making Lyra chase him in patterns she had never considered. Each movement was calculated, yet instinctual, blending human ingenuity with reflexes honed over years of survival on Earth. The spectators were silent, watching in awe. This was more than a duel. It was a lesson in strategy, intelligence, and courage. A single human had not only survived, but challenged a warrior who had never been defeated. Many began to whisper among themselves. Perhaps humans were stronger than the galaxy had believed. Lyra, despite her frustration, began to feel respect for her opponent. She had expected an easy victory, but Elias had changed the rules of combat simply by being unpredictable. His movements, his timing, and his clever use of the environment forced her to rethink her strategies. "You are remarkable, human," she admitted, her voice softer now. "I cannot predict you. You are not just fighting, you are thinking. You are extraordinary." Elias smiled faintly. "Humans have survived impossible odds for millennia. Adaptability is our strength. That is why I am still standing." As the suns dipped below the horizon, the arena glowed with the light of energy panels and sparks from their duel. The first stage of combat had ended, and yet the battle was far from over. Elias had proven that humans could survive against even the most skilled alien warriors. Lyra had learned that strength alone was not enough, and both of them understood that the real challenge was just beginning. The crowd erupted in applause, some standing in awe, others whispering about the human who dared to challenge the unbeatable princess. Whispers spread quickly. Humans were not weak. They were clever, resilient, and frighteningly unpredictable. And across the galaxy, that reputation would only grow. Lyra looked at Elias one last time as the platforms glimmered in the twilight. "This is far from over, human," she said, a note of challenge in her voice. "Next time you will see what happens when I unleash everything." Elias met her gaze steadily. "I will be ready," he said calmly. "Humans are always ready." The arena fell silent as the first part of the duel concluded, leaving both combatants and spectators with a sense of awe. The battle had proven one thing: humans were not to be underestimated. And for Princess Lyra, a new respect and a new challenge had begun. The twin moons of Zyphera had begun to rise, casting a silvery glow over the floating arena. The platform beneath the combatants shimmered like liquid glass, reflecting the lights from the city below and the energy sparks from earlier clashes. The air was thick with tension, and the crowd, though silent, could feel the intensity building. This was no longer a simple duel. It had become a test of strategy, skill, and determination. Princess Lyra's pride was both her strength and her weakness. She had trained her entire life for combat, mastering techniques that few in the galaxy could match. Yet standing across from her was a human who did not follow rules she understood. Elias Kane did not rely solely on strength or speed. He relied on observation, creativity, and the instinct to adapt to every situation. Lyra's glowing eyes narrowed as she focused. "You've done well so far, human," she said, her voice low but sharp, "but this is where my true skill begins." She lifted her hands, and the air around her rippled violently. The energy lines of the arena responded to her presence, vibrating and humming with power. Platforms beneath her feet shifted slightly, creating a moving labyrinth that would challenge any opponent. Elias watched carefully. Humans had always survived by reading their environment, noticing small details others overlooked. He noticed the subtle patterns in the shifting platforms, the faint flicker of energy indicating which panels would tilt or sink first. Timing and placement would be everything. He moved cautiously at first, testing the panels with light steps. When one trembled, he shifted his weight, letting it stabilize before advancing. Lyra lunged forward, sending a series of spinning energy blades toward him. Elias dove to the side, rolling across the panel, narrowly avoiding a blade that cut through the air like a streak of fire. He sprang to his feet and noticed a small opening between two platforms. Calculating quickly, he jumped and landed in perfect balance, using the arena itself as part of his strategy. The spectators gasped. Many had never seen a human move with such precision. Lyra's attacks were powerful, but Elias' unpredictability made him difficult to hit. The aliens whispered among themselves. Humans were not only clever but fast learners. They observed, they adapted, and they used what was around them better than most species could. Lyra's frustration began to show. Her glowing hands flared brighter, energy crackling in the air as she prepared her next attack. She extended her arms, summoning a series of rapid energy strikes aimed directly at Elias. Each strike was faster and more precise than the last, designed to overwhelm and end the duel quickly. Elias didn't panic. He had faced pressure before. On Earth, humans had trained in dangerous environments, learning to make split-second decisions under stress. He studied the strikes, noticing slight variations in timing and trajectory. With careful, precise movements, he dodged and deflected several of the strikes, using a broken shard of energy from the previous round to redirect one of the attacks back toward Lyra. Lyra leapt backward, narrowly avoiding the redirected energy. Her eyes widened. No one had ever turned her own techniques against her before. She realized, with a mix of irritation and respect, that Elias was not just reacting, he was anticipating. His mind worked differently, blending instinct with strategy in ways she had never seen. "You are learning quickly," she said, her voice sharp but tinged with admiration. "Too quickly." Elias offered no response. He focused on movement and timing, adjusting to the shifting platforms and Lyra's attacks. He knew that humans' greatest strength was their adaptability, and he intended to use it fully. With a leap, he moved onto a platform that was tilting dangerously. He felt the instability beneath him, but he balanced carefully, using it to launch himself toward Lyra with unexpected speed. The princess barely had time to react. She blocked his approach with a shield of energy, but the momentum of his leap forced her backward. Sparks flew as their energy clashed, illuminating the arena in brilliant flashes. The crowd roared, amazed by the spectacle. Lyra realized that raw power alone would not win this duel. She needed to think differently to anticipate the humans' moves before they happened. Her mind raced, analyzing every step, every glance, every micro-movement Elias made. But the human was unpredictable. Each time she thought she had him figured out, he did something new, something clever, something that turned her expectations upside down. "You are extraordinary," she admitted quietly, almost to herself. "How can a human move like this?" Elias paused briefly, catching his breath. He observed the arena, noting the unstable panels, the energy currents, and the shifting lights. Humans had always survived by using their environment, by turning disadvantages into advantages. He realized that the arena itself could become part of his strategy. With careful steps, he led Lyra toward a series of panels that shifted more dramatically than the others. Lyra noticed what he was doing and adjusted, but the human was cleverer than she anticipated. He used the shifting panels to change his speed and angle, dodging her attacks while forcing her to overextend. One misstep, and even a warrior like Lyra could fall. The tension in the arena grew. Sparks of energy flew with every clash, lighting up the night sky. The crowd watched in awe as the human adapted, countered, and advanced in ways that seemed impossible. Lyra's frustration mixed with respect. She had been the undefeated princess, but this human was challenging everything she had ever known about combat. "You are strong," she admitted, her voice steady now despite her growing exhaustion. "But can you endure this?" She raised both hands and summoned a massive wave of energy, sending it rushing across the arena like a storm. The floor trembled and the spectators gasped at the sheer power of the attack. Elias didn't hesitate. He studied the wave, noticing how it moved and where it would hit first. With careful timing, he jumped onto a higher platform, letting the wave pass beneath him. The energy brushed his feet but did not knock him off balance. He landed lightly and used the momentum to launch himself toward Lyra, ready for his next move. The duel had become a battle of wits as much as skill. Lyra unleashed a flurry of attacks, each one more complex than the last. Elias adapted, using the arena, his instincts, and his creativity to counter. The crowd was mesmerized. They had never seen a duel like this, one that combined intelligence, agility, and courage so seamlessly. Lyra's pride burned, but so did her admiration. She had trained for decades to be unbeatable, yet a human had not only survived, but forced her to rethink her strategies. Each move he made challenged her, pushed her limits, and demanded she adapt in ways she never had before. "You are impressive," she admitted finally, her voice a mixture of respect and challenge. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as the galaxy believes." Elias smiled faintly. "We are stronger than most expect," he said calmly. "Strength alone is not enough. Adaptability, intelligence, and courage, that is what allows us to endure." Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. She would not lose, not yet. She summoned her energy once more, this time combining speed, precision, and raw power. The arena responded, platforms shifting rapidly, energy spikes shooting up from the floor, creating a labyrinth of danger. Elias took a deep breath. This was the moment humans had always trained for, improvising, surviving, and using their environment to their advantage. He moved carefully, each step calculated, each leap precise. He dodged spikes, rolled under energy waves, and used the shifting platforms to redirect Lyra's own attacks. The spectators could hardly believe what they were seeing. A human, fragile by alien standards, was not only surviving but dominating the pace of the duel. Aliens whispered among themselves, shocked and impressed. Humans were supposed to be weak, slow, and fragile, but here was one rewriting the rules of combat. Lyra's pride and determination pushed her forward. She launched a final, powerful series of strikes, energy surging from her hands like lightning. Elias met each strike with careful calculation, using speed, balance, and intuition to evade, redirect, and counter. Sparks flew with every clash, illuminating the arena in brilliant colors. The duel had reached a point where neither combatant could claim an easy victory. Lyra, despite her skill, had to respect the human's ingenuity. Elias, despite being new to this world, had to rely on every lesson he had ever learned. The battle was no longer just about strength. It was about mind, strategy, and resilience. As the energy flares died down, both combatants paused, breathing heavily but standing tall. Lyra looked at Elias, her pride intact but tempered by respect. "You have surprised me," she admitted, her voice low but steady. "You are not only strong but clever, quick, and fearless. Humans are remarkable." Elias met her gaze calmly. "I've survived because I had to," he said simply. "Humans endure by thinking, learning, and adapting. That is how we thrive." The crowd erupted into cheers, amazed by the skill, courage, and intelligence displayed. Whispers spread across the arena. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were unpredictable, clever, and capable of feats no one thought possible. Lyra clenched her fists, a mixture of frustration and admiration on her face. She had not lost, but she had learned something crucial. Humans were not just strong. They were dangerous because of their minds, their courage, and their ability to adapt. And Elias Kane was proof of that. The arena fell into a tense silence, both combatants standing, waiting for the next phase of the duel. Sparks of energy still flickered across the floor, the floating platforms trembling slightly with residual power. The night had become alive with anticipation. Lyra finally spoke, her voice steady, her glowing eyes locked on Elias. "The duel is far from over, human. You have survived, but can you endure the trials to come?" Elias nodded. "I will endure," he said calmly. "Humans always do." The twin moons of Scifi shone brightly overhead, casting their silvery light across the arena. The spectators leaned forward, knowing they were witnessing something historic, a battle not just of strength, but of wits, resilience, and unexpected courage. And in that moment, the legend of the human Captain Elias Kane began to grow. The arena had transformed into a shifting maze of energy. The floating platforms now moved unpredictably, rising and falling, tilting at dangerous angles. Bright streaks of energy arced through the air, pulsing in rhythm with Princess Lyra's growing power. The twin moons of Zyphera cast silver shadows that danced across the battlefield, making every movement both beautiful and perilous. Elia's cane surveyed the arena carefully. Every panel, every arc of energy, every flicker of light was a potential threat, but also an opportunity. Humans had always survived by reading the environment, by noticing details others missed. Here, on an alien world, Elias' instincts and training guided him. Every step was calculated, every leap precise. He did not panic, he did not rush. Humans survived impossible odds by staying calm, thinking clearly, and adapting quickly. Lyra moved with terrifying speed. Energy crackled around her hands, forming blades, shields, and arcs of light that threatened to engulf the arena. She had trained her entire life for moments like this, unpredictable challenges, impossible odds, but Elias' ability to adapt was unlike anything she had faced before. "You have done well to survive this long," she said, her voice sharp and commanding, yet tinged with something else, respect. "But can you handle everything I am capable of?" Elias nodded, his gaze steady. "I can handle whatever comes." Lyra smiled faintly, but it was not the playful smile from before. This was a smile that acknowledged a worthy opponent. She leapt into the air, spinning rapidly, and unleashed a torrent of energy shards aimed at Elias from multiple directions. Each shard moved faster than the eye could follow, creating a web of danger. Elias' heart raced, but his mind remained calm. Humans had trained for moments where instinct and thought had to work together. He watched the energy patterns, noting slight differences in speed and direction. With a series of flips, rolls, and precise steps, he navigated the deadly web, redirecting one shard with a kick, ducking under another, and using the tilting platforms to change his trajectory. The crowd gasped. The human moved like a living shadow, fluid and precise, turning Lyra's attacks into part of his own strategy. The aliens whispered among themselves, astonished. They had been told humans were fragile and slow. Yet here was one outmaneuvering a warrior who had never been defeated. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She had always believed that strength and speed would be enough. But Elias demonstrated something different: creativity, adaptability, and calm under pressure. Every move he made was unexpected, and every decision had purpose. "You think differently," Lyra said, her voice quiet, almost in awe. "You are not just surviving, you are learning from me." Elias paused briefly, catching his breath. "Observing, adapting, and using what is around me. That is how humans survive." He darted forward again, exploiting a gap between two energy blades, landing lightly on a platform that tilted sharply beneath him. The momentum carried him closer to Lyra, forcing her to adjust mid-attack. The princess's attacks grew faster, more complex, but Elias remained calm. Each strike he evaded, each jump he made, and each landing he executed was a combination of instinct and intellect. Humans had survived on unpredictable Earth terrain, in dangerous weather, and under threats far more deadly than anything Zyphera could offer. That experience, though alien to her, gave him an edge she had not expected. Lyra leapt toward him, spinning midair, energy crackling around her like lightning. Elias dodged, rolling under her path, and noticed a weak point in the energy field she had formed. With a swift movement, he tapped into the platform beneath him, redirecting the energy just enough to create an opening. In that moment, he saw an opportunity. The human's adaptability amazed her. In a split second, he could observe, calculate, and act in ways that went beyond strength or skill. He used the arena itself as part of his strategy, turning what should have been his weakness, the shifting, unstable panels, into an advantage. Lyra realized with a shock that humans were dangerous precisely because they could use intelligence in ways no warrior she had trained against ever could. "You are extraordinary," Lyra whispered under her breath, stepping back to gain perspective. "No one has ever challenged me like this." Elias did not speak. He focused entirely on movement, on observation, on survival. Humans had learned to endure by thinking, by reading the environment, and by turning disadvantages into strengths. Every action he took in the arena was calculated yet instinctual. The battle escalated further. Lyra unleashed a sweeping wave of energy, forcing Elias to leap across multiple platforms. Sparks flew as energy collided with energy, lighting up the arena in bright flashes. Panels tilted beneath their feet, some sinking slightly under the weight of the combatants. Each movement had to be precise. One misstep could mean falling hundreds of feet to the city below. Elias used the tilt of the platforms to his advantage. By timing his leaps and rolls with the movement of the panels, he conserved energy and gained speed. He moved unpredictably, forcing Lyra to adjust constantly, breaking her rhythm. His ability to think under pressure and adapt quickly gave him a subtle yet undeniable advantage. The crowd leaned forward, unable to tear their eyes away. Aliens whispered in amazement, unable to comprehend how a human could survive and even control the pace of the duel. Lyra, despite her pride, had to admit that he was exceptional. Her attacks were powerful, her techniques precise, but Elias had found ways to turn her own strategies against her. "You are learning my style," she admitted, voice tight. "But it is not enough. You must also anticipate the impossible." Elias smiled faintly. "Then I will." He leapt again, this time using the shifting platforms to launch himself into a complex spin, dodging a series of energy spikes and landing perfectly behind Lyra. The sudden maneuver caught her off guard. For the first time, she realized that raw power, speed, and skill were not enough to dominate him. Humans had something different: unpredictability, ingenuity, and the ability to turn disadvantage into opportunity. Every step Elias took demonstrated not just survival but control. He was learning from her, yes, but he was also creating openings she had not planned for. The realization struck Lyra hard. She had underestimated humans, as many species had across the galaxy. They were not just fragile creatures, they were clever, adaptable, and fearless. And this one human, Captain Elias Kane, embodied every strength she had never considered. "You are dangerous," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Humans are not what I expected." Elias paused briefly, watching her carefully. "We endure by observing, learning, and adapting," he said calmly. "Strength alone is never enough." Lyra's expression shifted. Pride still burned within her, but a new respect had taken root. She adjusted her stance, raising her arms, energy surging brighter than ever. This time her attack was not just power, it was precision, timing, and strategy combined. She was challenging him not only physically but mentally. Elias analyzed the attack, his mind working quickly. He observed the angles, the speed, the timing. He realized that Lyra was testing him, pushing him to adapt in ways she had never done before. Humans had always survived challenges like this, by staying calm, observing carefully, and reacting with intelligence and creativity. With careful timing, he used the shifting platforms to dodge, redirect, and counter, turning Lyra's own energy against her. Sparks flew, illuminating the arena in brilliant flashes of blue, gold, and silver. The crowd erupted into cheers, amazed by the spectacle. Lyra landed lightly, breathing heavily, but her eyes glowed with something new, admiration. "You have adapted faster than anyone I have ever faced," she admitted. "Humans are remarkable." Elias met her gaze calmly. "We endure, that is what we do." The duel had reached a turning point. Lyra, despite her unmatched skill and power, had to recognize the truth. Humans were not weak. They were clever, adaptable, and resilient. And Elias Kane had proven that a human could challenge even the most skilled alien warrior in ways no one had predicted. The crowd, sensing the change in tone, cheered even louder. Whispers spread throughout the arena. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were intelligent, resourceful, and courageous beyond measure. The legend of the human warrior had begun to grow. Lyra stepped back, lowering her energy slightly. "This is far from over," she said, her voice steady but tinged with respect. "But I have learned something important today. Humans are not just survivors, they are fighters in ways I had never imagined." Elias nodded. "And I have learned that even the strongest warriors can be outsmarted. Respect is earned through courage and skill, not just power." As the arena's energy panels hummed softly, both combatants stood tall, catching their breath. Sparks of energy flickered across the platforms, reflecting the intensity of the battle they had just endured. The night sky above Scifi shone with twin moons, casting silver light across the arena. The duel was far from over, but both Princess Lyra and Captain Elias Kane understood something vital. Humans were formidable not because of raw strength, but because of intelligence, adaptability, and courage. And in that moment, respect was forged, a respect that would change the course of the battle, and perhaps the galaxy itself. The arena had become a breathtaking spectacle under the twin moons of Sci-Fi. Energy panels floated and tilted unpredictably, some rising sharply while others sank, creating a landscape that demanded absolute focus and precision. Sparks of energy lit the sky with every strike, every movement leaving trails of light in its wake. The crowd of aliens watched with wide eyes and held breaths, knowing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Princess Lyra and Captain Elias Kane stood on opposite ends of the arena. Both were breathing heavily, sweat and energy crackling on their bodies, but neither showed any sign of giving up. Lyra's glowing eyes reflected the silver light of the moons, her pride still burning strong, yet tempered by respect. Elias' calm gaze met hers steadily, his human determination shining through. "This is it, human," Lyra said, her voice carrying across the arena. "The final stage, we end this now and only one of us will stand unbroken." Elias nodded. "I didn't come here just to fight. I came to endure, to learn, and to show that humans are not what you think. Let's finish this." Lyra's smile was faint but sharp. With a surge of energy, she launched herself into the air, spinning with incredible speed. Waves of energy radiated from her hands, forming arcs and blades that crisscrossed the arena in a dazzling display. The platforms shifted violently beneath their feet, tilting and sinking in a rhythm that would have been impossible to navigate for anyone untrained. Elias focused. Humans had always survived against impossible odds, using intelligence, timing, and adaptability. He watched Lyra's movements, noticing subtle changes in rhythm, in speed, in the angles of her attacks. Each micro-movement gave him a clue. He leapt across panels, rolled under energy blades, and used the tilting platforms to gain momentum for his own maneuvers. The duel had become more than just physical combat. It was a battle of strategy and wits. Lyra unleashed energy spikes that shot upward from the floor, forcing Elias to time every leap perfectly. Sparks flew with every clash, illuminating the spectators' faces in awe. The humans' movements were precise, fluid, and unexpected. "You move too well," Lyra muttered, barely audible over the hum of energy. "I cannot predict you, human," Elias smiled faintly. "I do not move to be predicted. I move to adapt." He landed lightly on a tilting platform, using its motion to launch himself into the air, dodging another flurry of energy attacks. The spectators gasped again, astonished at the human's agility. Lyra's frustration grew. She had trained for years, mastered techniques that most species could not even dream of, yet Elias had survived every attack, every trap, and had even begun to turn her strategies against her. He was learning from her, but she had underestimated the human ability to improvise. "You are remarkable," she admitted, her glowing eyes narrowing not in anger but in awe. "No one has challenged me like this before." Elias steadied himself on a rising panel, his gaze unwavering. "Humans survive by thinking, learning, and adapting. That is how we endure." Lyra paused midair, energy radiating around her. For the first time, she considered something beyond victory. She studied Elias, noticing not just his skill, but his courage, intelligence, and unwavering focus. He was not only a fighter, but a strategist, a being capable of turning challenges into opportunities. "You are not just surviving, you are controlling the flow of battle," she said, her voice quieter now, filled with respect. "How do you do it?" Elias landed softly on a platform, letting the energy beneath him pulse harmlessly. "Humans endure by using what we have and what we see around us. We adapt, we observe, and we act. That is our strength." Lyra's eyes narrowed as she realized the truth in his words. Strength alone would never win against someone who could think faster, adapt quicker, and use the environment to their advantage. Her energy surged, brighter and more precise than ever, but Elias moved with equal skill, dodging, redirecting, and using the shifting platforms to turn her attacks into openings. The duel reached a new level of intensity. Sparks of energy shot high into the sky with each collision. Platforms tilted at impossible angles, yet both combatants navigated them perfectly. Lyra's attacks became faster, more aggressive, more unpredictable, and Elias adapted seamlessly, countering with timing and intelligence. The spectators were on the edge of their seats. Aliens whispered in awe. Humans, they realized, were not weak. They were clever, unpredictable, and formidable. And this one human, Captain Elias Kane, had not only survived but had forced the undefeated Princess Lyra to respect him. Lyra realized that she had underestimated humans. They were not fragile or weak. They were resilient, resourceful, and intelligent beyond expectation, and Elias Kane embodied every one of those qualities. "You are dangerous," Lyra said quietly, almost to herself. "Humans are more than I imagined." Elias met her gaze calmly. "Strength alone is never enough. Courage, intelligence, and adaptability are what make us endure." For the first time, Lyra slowed her attacks, creating space between them. She studied him closely, her mind working faster than ever. She realized that a true warrior was not defined by victory alone, but by the ability to endure, adapt, and respect a worthy opponent. "You have proven yourself human," she said finally, her voice steady. "Not just in skill, but in spirit. You have survived what no other challenger could, and for that you have my respect." Elias' eyes met hers, calm and determined. "Respect is earned, princess, and you have earned mine as well. You are not just strong, you are clever, disciplined, and fearless." The crowd erupted into cheers. Whispers spread across the arena. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were capable of intelligence, courage, and creativity that few species could match. Elias Kane had become a symbol of human resilience, earning respect not through brute strength alone, but through adaptability, strategy, and courage. Lyra descended from the air, landing lightly on a platform beside him. Her glowing eyes softened, and for the first time a faint smile appeared on her face. "I underestimated you," she admitted, "but now I see that humans are more than I ever imagined. Perhaps we can learn from each other." Elias nodded. "That is all I ever hoped for." Humans survive by learning, but also by sharing knowledge. Strength is greater when combined with respect and understanding. The arena, once filled with tension and danger, seemed to relax. Sparks of energy flickered gently across the platforms as the battle ended. Lyra and Elias stood facing each other, exhausted but unbroken. The twin moons of Zyphera shone down, casting silver light on the two warriors who had earned each other's respect. The spectators erupted into a standing ovation, cheering for the duel that had tested skill, strategy, and spirit. Across the city, news of the humans' remarkable performance spread quickly. Aliens whispered in amazement. Humans were not weak. They were clever, resilient, and capable of facing the impossible. Lyra extended a hand toward Elias. "Captain Kane," she said, her voice calm but filled with meaning, "you have proven that humans are formidable. I offer you not just respect, but an alliance. Together, we could accomplish far more than either of us alone." Elias took her hand firmly. "An alliance is earned through trust and respect, and you have both. Humans honor strength, courage, and intelligence, and I see all of that in you." The crowd cheered even louder, witnessing not just the end of a duel, but the beginning of a new partnership. Humans and Zypherans, once strangers, were now bound by respect, admiration, and the promise of future cooperation. Lyra stepped back, her glowing eyes meeting his once more. "This is just the beginning," she said. "Together, we will explore, learn, and protect the galaxy in ways neither of us could do alone." Elias nodded. "Humans thrive in the face of challenges, and with allies like you, we can face anything the universe throws at us." The arena's energy panels shimmered softly, reflecting the calm after the storm of battle. Sparks of energy danced around them, but now there was no threat, only recognition of skill, courage, and mutual respect. As the crowd continued to cheer, Lyra and Elias turned toward the edge of the platform, looking out at the city of Zyphera below. The skyline shimmered with light, the twin moons reflecting off crystal spires and metal towers. The night was peaceful, yet charged with possibility. The legend of the human Captain Elias Kane had begun. Across the galaxy, whispers would spread about the human who survived against the undefeated Princess Lyra, who adapted, learned, and turned challenges into opportunity. Humanity's reputation as clever, resilient, and formidable had been cemented on Zyphera, and the bond formed in that arena promised a future filled with exploration, cooperation, and discovery. Lyra looked at Elias one last time, a mixture of pride and respect in her eyes. "You have earned your place among the greatest warriors of the galaxy, human, and perhaps, one day, we will see what humans and Zypherans can achieve together." Elias smiled. "I look forward to that day. Together, we are stronger." The twin moons cast their silver light over the arena as the crowd continued to cheer. Sparks of energy faded, platforms settled into place, and the night became quiet once more. But in that silence was the beginning of a new story, A story of humans, of courage, of ingenuity, and of alliances that could shape the future of the galaxy. The duel had ended, but the adventure had only just begun. And Captain Elias Kane, the human who had survived against impossible odds, would go down in history as a symbol of intelligence, adaptability, and the strength of the human spirit.